Americans, 3 Americans, because Issa, are you Cameroonian or American?
I am a global citizen. I don't have a country. I don't have nationality. I'm just from Africa.
Oh, I think he's from Africa. Yesterday we were privileged to have these people talk to us about film, cinema, and so on and so forth. And this afternoon, we have Mr. Glen Fisher, an African American who has come to share his experiences with us. Am I right? Yes. I don't know if he's going to be a lecturer, no, but he's just going to share his experiences with us, being an African American. And from my understanding, it's here please, it's here. From my understanding, he's coming back home in search of his roots. He's going to be talking to you more about that. And he just wants you to know what it means, how it feels to be African American, what it feels coming back home, what his expectations are, what he plans to do after this visit. Yes. So you're going to continue with him, and I'm going to leave you with Dr. Mbu, because I'm in a staff meeting.
Sure.
He's my colleague, and he's my senior colleague of the English department. So he's here with students of the English department. I will also have students of the performing arts section. I'm in a staff meeting.
Okay.
So I'll let you go on with the conversation, and I'll join you later.
Okay. Thank you. Anything you want to say before I introduce the guest?
Well, maybe just since we are running against time, so just...
So, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Issa Niafaga. I was born in Cameroon in 1967, and I live in Paris for 10 years. I am from the Tikar tribe. It's a tribe that lives in Bam region, northern of Yaounde. We are cousin of Bamileke, Bafia people, Bamoun, Banso, and so on. And so I find myself in Paris for 10 years because I have a political struggle in Cameroon. Then I moved to the US 7 years ago, and I have an organization called Hope International for Tika people. And I saw that, I realized one morning that my journey to the human contemporary society have shifted, and I just realized one day that I can be a bridge for a lot of people. So in my community where there is over 30 villages, the organization act in water projects and public health, education, HIV and AIDS, and rural development. But I also have this project of bringing African American home who has a DNA from the tribe. So it's a story of Glen Fisher today. So he discovered his DNA that he's from the Tuka people in Cameroon. And 3 years ago, I brought Anita Woodley here. She's the one who connected Glen Fisher with me to come back to Cameroon. So thank you very much for coming to listen to Glen today, because the reason why I want to support the work of Glen is because he took a courage to come back to Africa because he has a call. And he's been having a call since he was a child, or since he never even thought that he would get back home and give you an impression of what he's thinking, because I can't really use his word to talk about how he's feels today and what he's coming to do back in Cameroon. So we met one of the chiefs of the village today because he's spending some time in Yaounde, but Glen will take time to tell you about his experience and his background. And I'm expecting that you will respond to and have questions to him. Thank you very much for your attention.
Hello. Again, my name is Glen Fisher. I want to start by saying that Glen Fisher is the name that I got from my parents. My mother named me Glen after my father's best friend. My last name Fisher. I want you to understand most African Americans, they have English last names, French. Let me slow down. Okay. Again, I'm Glen Fisher. Glen, I received that name from my father's best friend. He named me after his best friend. And his friend named his son after my father. My last name, Fisher. that goes back maybe 150 years to a plantation. As you all are aware of American slavery, when Africans were kidnapped and taken across the Atlantic, the Middle Passage, and brought to America, we were given the last names of our slave owners. And it's 2013, and we still have those names. Johnson, DeVoe, Fisher, Jackson. So one of the things that I want to achieve coming to Cameroon is to find out my real name, to find out my real last name. I think I owe that to my ancestors, because my ancestors were forced to not have their names anymore. They were forced to not speak their traditional language. They were forced to abandon their culture, to abandon their traditional ways. And it's one of my objectives to regain all of that from my ancestors. And so this trip is real special for me, very spiritual for me. Coming to Cameroon is the same as a Muslim going to Mecca or a Jewish person going to Israel. This is what Cameroon is to me. So my family back home is very excited because I'm the first in my family to come back to Africa since slavery. One of few African Americans who will actually go back to the actual villages. A little background about myself. I grew up in the southern region of North Carolina, in the southern region of the United States, called North Carolina. I have one brother, 2 sisters. I'm a father of 4. I have a 1-year-old, a 4-year-old, a 15-year-old, and I have an 11. I have 4 kids, but I'm done. There are no more children now. I'm done. That's it. I graduated from North Carolina Central University. It's a historically black college in America. We have 103 black colleges in North Carolina, and this is one of them. Actually, this was the first university that was publicly funded by the state government in America. I'm currently a student now, working on my master's degree in public administration. It's one of my goals to use what I'm learning in this program to build my nonprofit called We Are Scholars to help African American students get to college. A lot of African Americans don't go to higher education because they don't know how to apply. They may think they can't afford to go to school. So I do workshops in educating them on how to find the right school they need to go to, how to find financial resources. I do a lot of mentoring and things like that. So that's why I'm in this program. And I'm considering going to law school. Since I've met Issa, and since I've discovered my ancestry with the Tikar people, I've been seriously wanting to get involved in human rights and increase the human rights condition around the world. Even if it's something as simple as educating people in America, especially African Americans, about some of the challenges people are dealing with in other parts of the world. And try to use, my experience here, bringing awareness and raising resources, even financial resources. I would love to see more Cameroonian students come to college in America, and we can share those experiences. I don't think there's enough scholarship funding to help African students to come to America. I think that would really help, and that's something I really want to do, a project I plan to take on. If you don't mind, I prefer questions. I can get detailed with questions. Anybody have any questions?
Okay, before the questions, I would like to say that this is not the first time that African American and African collaborate. There have been a lot of projects going on. For example, Barack Obama fathers were brought to the US by an artist. How do you call the Jamaican African American artist? Hollywood one. Just a movie about him.
Come on, Stevie.
No. He has a all my
You
life.
said Jay?
It's an old man. I just forgot his name. He was in Hollywood and we just had a movie about him. The name will come back.
No, Richard.
Huh? No, Richard. No, Richard. He's alive. He's very old. He's bald now. He was an actor in Hollywood.
I said Barack Obama.
No. Yeah, he programmed brought Barack Obama's father in the States.
Oh, I'm not. What decade?
That was like 30 years ago. Yeah.
Is it
50 years ago.
Henri Belafonte?
Henri Belafonte.
Oh, yeah.
So-
he's always been involved.
Henri Belafonte, as an artist, very, very strong activist, has a program with the U.S. government to brought African leaders to study in America. And they took young people from Kenya and then brought them to the U.S. That's how Barack Obama's fathers was studying in America. And also Miriam Makeba was discovered by Henri Belafonte in the U.S. So it's not the first time that this is happening. The conversation been starting since long time. But as an artist today and also a contemporary person, I think that it's a very unfair, the journey of African American from Africa overseas. You know, there have been a lot of misunderstanding. There have not been any reconciliation process. There have been confusing speeches. You know what I'm saying? Like when I listen to some of the people who talk about the slavery or the journey of African American in the US or here, it doesn't match with the speech. And there is a proverb saying that until the lion told the story, the only story that have been told is by the hunter. You know that even internationally, we don't own a very strong media's networks. Meaning that the way they present Africans today is not how we feel. You know, and I was telling you that the two young people who left Cameroon yesterday, when they was coming here, they told them that they will be captured in Cameroon by Boko Haram. Yeah. Yes. Okay. So why don't you tell us about how was Africa was introduced to you before you got here?
Okay. Growing up in America, you see three types of Africa on television. Even today, in 2013, you see sick children, sick,
From Ethiopia.
hungry, insects on their face. And when you're a little boy and you see this, and you see that they look just like you grow this type of contempt, not only for Africa, but subconsciously for yourself. The second image you see of Africa on television is war. You see tribal warlords, people shooting guns in the air. So you grow afraid, like, I don't want to go there. You know, I'd rather go to Compton. The third thing you see is you see animals, lions, giraffes, rhinoceros. So it's 2013, and I have family and friends who was nervous about me coming to Africa. My roommate, who is college educated, warned me of getting attacked by lions. Literally, like in Cameroon. He thought I was going to get attacked by lions. My mother was afraid that I was going to get kidnapped by a tribal warlord. You know, so this is the stuff that I had to deal with coming over here, but they don't know any different. All they know of Africa is what they've seen on television. Me, I've read a lot about Africa. One of my favorite writers, Chinua Achebe, Things Fall Apart, one of my favorite books. I'm a financial aid counselor at a community college, and I have a lot of African students. And every time they sit in my desk, I ask them, what is your name? And some of them will tell me their name. Then I ask them, what's the meaning of your name? And a lot of them don't even know. Most of the African young people in America don't even know the meaning of their name. And I tell them, I say, that's a diamond. I don't have that privilege. I don't know what my name is. So they even have a distorted view of African Americans. Because I would ask them, what did you think of African Americans before you came here? And He thought we was driving around in luxury cars, diamonds in our earrings, necklace, and gold teeth, and you know, so that was what the videos show. So there's a lot of misunderstanding of both sides. I think it's a misunderstanding of each other's history. I think that it will benefit Africans to understand the history of Africans in the West, from slavery to segregation to now, just as it would help us to understand the history of Africa, you know, all the way through colonialism. You know, my degree is in history, so I studied colonialism when I was in school. I read Frantz Fanon, The Wretched of the Earth, one of my favorite books that explained the psychological impact of colonialism. You know, that was my first introduction to understanding how that system can impact a person's behavior. But there are books that are the equivalent for our experience as well. You know, so, and I'm glad to come here to see that all of those images I saw were false. They were wrong. I never once felt afraid from the moment I stepped off the airplane. If anything, people were rushing to help me and grab my bags, you know, asking me for money, of course. But I've received nothing but love, you know, and so, and I hope I can convince more of my people to come back, you know, because this has been a great experience. Even to come here and speak to you all, this is real great for me. Thank you.
So, do you guys have a question for Fisher? Okay, so before you ask any question, just raise your hands and say your name, and you can ask the question to Fisher or me. Yes?
I'm called Yaounde.
Yes.
I want to know how you came, how did you come to know you were from Cameroon?
All right. She's asking me, how do I know that I'm from Cameroon? There's a company called African Ancestry Incorporated. They specialize in DNA testing. Of course, you can use DNA to determine who your mother is or who your father is, but you can also determine your ethnic origin. This company has the most comprehensive database of African DNA, over 25,000 DNA samples. All an African American has to do is pay the money, and they send you a kit, and you cotton swab your mouth and send it back, and they take the DNA out, and they see whose DNA you match with in a database. And my maternal ancestry matched up with Tikar people 99.4%. So my paternal, through my father's line, go back to Europe, which is common for most African Americans, because during slavery, slave owners used to rape a lot of the women. So most of our paternal ancestry go back to Europe. But my mother's line is here in Cameroon, Tikar. So opening that letter and finding out where I'm from, I don't even have an English word to describe what that felt like. I give the metaphor. If you've been an adopted child, like you don't know who your parents are, someone adopts you, after you grow older, you're going to know who your real mother is. So you ask your adopted parent, who is my real mother? And your real mother, they will tell you she was sick, she was on drugs, she didn't want you, she gave you up, she was a horrible parent. So you hear all of these negative things about your biological mother your whole life. Somebody you've never even met, someone you've never even seen. So you grow a hatred for someone that you never met. But every time you look in the mirror, you think of that person you never met. So you subconsciously hate yourself. So as you get older, something else happened. I have to meet her. I have to ask her face to face. Why did you give me up? Why didn't you want to take care of me? What was wrong with me? And I'm here. You know, metaphorically, Africa is my biological mother.
Sure.
And of course, I found out all of those things my adopted parents told me were lies. You know, that we come from a great culture, great tradition, great people. You know, everything that I've learned or was told about Africa was totally false. And I'm glad to see for myself firsthand, you know, that everything that I learned was not true.
So you can discover, you can see how much courage it takes to Glen to got here, because he wanted to come and experience the truth himself. He didn't want to stay in America and just got media to tell him African people still walk naked, they live in the trees, or you can get kidnapped if you go. It means that he freed himself from the world that they own the brain of people. They tell people what to think, right? So I hope you have another question for Glen.
Yes, sir.
I have a remark to make. I'm Dikun Derek, Bantikun Derek. The thing is, when most of you come here, you tell us the same story. So what I'm saying is, the media has this negative way of impacting things. Now, the idea you have about Africa, most people have been here, and people still come to tell us the same story. It's just like here we have that impression that the African American culture is mostly gangsterism, rap music and stuff. That's what media does. So what I'm trying to say is, people like you who have come here, help us change this mentality of the outside world about Africa. Mediatize the good things that Africa have. Because most of what we see when we watch the foreign channels is war, hunger, misery and stuff. So that's just the remark I want to make.
I agree. I agree with you. And it's unfortunate that that negative image of African Americans of being gangsters and you know, thugs is not all true. In some cases it is true, but you know, you have that everywhere. I'm pretty sure you got gangsters here in Yaounde, you know, but you're right, it's not true. I think for us, we need to be in positions where we control our own media, where Africa is different. Everybody here is African. Where in America, we only represent 12.5% of the population. So we only have a few networks that can control our image. BET is one of them. You know, I believe there's TV One, and then there's another called Centric. I have my differences with BET. You know, I don't think it's the way it used to be. It used to be positive, but since it was under the control of another company, I'm not quite agreeable with the image, because they play a lot of music videos that give off an impression that that's how we are. That's not the case. But to answer your question, I think we have to take accountability for ourselves first as individuals and learn. I made it accountable to learn myself about Africa, studying the history, studying the culture, studying traditions, and like Brother Issa said, just having the courage to save my money. It cost me a lot of money to come here. You know, my mom got mad because I wouldn't go to Disney World. Because I came to Cameroon instead of going to Disney World. You know, how do you not?
We have another question.
Yes, sir.
Yes. What's your name?
Faulkner Burnley, I am.
Okay.
Thank you very much. I have two questions. The first one is, what are those things that you found here in Africa, or Cameroon in particular, that you don't like, that can make you to change your decision and go back to America? That is the first. And then the second question is, if before there was a problem of slavery and slave trade in America, and then after it became segregation, now what is the relationship between the blacks and the whites in America, and then the relation between the black Americans and the other Africans who stay in America?
Good questions. Wow. My impression of Cameroon. I won't say that there are things I don't like, because I'm still learning Cameroon, and I'm trying my best not to judge Cameroon based on my American experience. Of course, in America, you're used to a lot of resources. You're used to having access to so much, and we waste a lot of stuff. I know people who keep the water running, just let it run, or
Electricity.
They'll leave the lights on just so it can be on when they get back home. Yes. Literally. I used to do it. I will admit, I used to do it. But as I got older and started studying how other parts of the world didn't have, you know, the resource of having electricity. So I'm a little more mindful now of not wasting. But being in Cameroon, just observing, how do I say it? It needs to be more economic development, in my opinion. Just from observation, it needs more economic development, and not outside development. I mean self-sustainability. You know, one of the issues I personally have with Africa, personally as a whole, is the fact that most of our mineral resources are benefiting other countries. Every girlfriend I've had for the last 5 years, the first thing I tell them, I'm not buying you a diamond. I'm just letting you know, I'm not going to buy a diamond. You know, I don't want to contribute to any form of exploitation. You know, there's some things I can't do that I can't avoid, but the things I can, I will avoid. I want to see more economic self-sustainability, where Africa doesn't have to depend on European countries or depend on America, where, you know, we are the richest continent on the planet Earth. I mean, the richest continent, but yet economically the poorest. And to me, that doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense for me that South Africa is one of the leading diamond producing countries, but in such dire poverty. That doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense to me that there's a BP gas station on every corner in America, but the money is not benefiting the people in Nigeria. You know, that 2/3 of the country has no running water or electricity. So that's the issue with me. I major in public administration, and so whenever I do my class projects, I'm always thinking of, like, how can I use my education to help my people in Africa. You know, one of the goals I would love to see is dual citizenship offered to African Americans who trace their roots back to their African country of origin. I think that with both groups coming together politically like that, we can not only bring financial resources, but we can bring other resources as well. And I think if we can open up that door, that will help tremendously. Just to give you an example, I looked at Cameroon's GDP last year. I think it was like $43 billion. African Americans spent $900 billion last year. Literally.
And how much African American represent in America?
12.5%. We are 36 million citizens and spent $900 billion. Economists expect our spending power to go to 1.5 trillion by 2015. They said that if African Americans were a country, we'd be the 15th richest nation. But we're not a country. We spend money on things not necessary. Even though we have those resources, there's still a lot of challenges. Going back to your other question on race relations. Race relations has gotten a lot better. It's not as bad as it used to be, but you still have a lot of racial violence. Not to the degree it was 50 years ago, but you still have situations now where you may have police brutality. You find that more of anything than, you don't find anybody getting lynched anymore by racist groups. You find more police brutality situations. So that's our main big challenge now. Even though African Americans spend so much money, we still have the highest rate of unemployment. Our census, our Bureau of Labor and Statistics show that we have more than 15% of our people unemployed, and the national rate is 8.2%. 25% of African Americans live below the poverty line. 20% of African Americans have no health insurance of any kind. You know, so we have the highest numbers in those worst cases. You know, even though we have so many resources, we still are losing in comparison to the other groups. The racism now is not violent racism. It's more economic, social, educational. So it's a racism you can't see unless you think. You have to be able to read between the lines to see it. Most people don't see it. They think it's normal, you know. So I answered your question about Cameroon, what I thought.
The relationship between African American and
Africans. that relationship can become better. I think the biggest challenge that I have with the relationship of native-born Africans and African Americans is we don't see each other as the same. That is the biggest challenge I personally see. That's the first thing I make sure is clear when I meet Africans in America. We are the same. We are brothers. I speak of Africa in the first person. Even in America, when people ask me what I am, I tell them I'm African. There is no such thing as a United States DNA. There is no genetics to being an American. Everybody in America is from somewhere else. So my DNA takes me to Cameroon. So when somebody say, what are you? I say, I'm African. I'm Tikar. I'm from Cameroon. I'm not a citizen, you know, but that's what I am. So the relationship of Africans and African Americans need to start by first seeing each other as the same. And starting there, learning about each other's experience and history, and try to figure out how we can work together. Jewish Americans helped build Israel. Vietnamese Americans helped build Vietnam. Every other group in America helped their country of origin except African Americans, because we don't see ourselves as Africans, because we hate that aspect of ourselves. Some don't even like to be called African American. I mean, that's still a debate within our community. Some want to remove the African and just be American, you know, so that's a challenge in itself.
So, which is taking me to my next comment, is that he is starting, by coming here, he's starting a therapy. Because you know, when a woman is raped, before she got healed, the person who raped her have to come and apologize. That's the first step for therapy process. But most of the time, or sometimes, it doesn't happen. But you have to start your own therapeutic process, which is doing. You know what I'm saying? Believe it or not, people were taken here by force, and some people participated, and some people was against it. But they took them anyway, right? But the reason why America is a very important country is because if my memory is correct, only 25% of black people who were sold over Americas went to the US. And there are people who are making those changes, the civil rights and all the things. So sometimes the person who hurt you don't never come and say, I am sorry, so your soul can heal. But you can start the process yourself. It's the reason why Glen Fisher's here. Just to reconnect. It's very painful because we saw the chief an hour and a half ago, and then the chief told him how much he is very sad to see the change and everything. Glen Fisher cried. It made me, I was very in pain just to see that. So it's very symbolic that Glen Fisher is coming back. Another thing I want to tell you is that Glen Fisher is not the only African American with the Tikar DNA to come back to Cameroon. Some people come here in December. They go to safari. They don't go to the Tikar land. What usually happens is that when it happens, I am in the US and people call me and tell me, you are the president of the Tikar people, why do you let this happen? Because they don't take people to the right place. But tomorrow we're taking Glen Fisher to the Tikar village, because in any Tikar village there is a ring of trenches, 3 rings of trenches in any village where the Tikar people dig them to protect themselves from people who were taking slaves. This is what he needs to see, which the other group, massive people coming to television and perform and show Cameroon that the African Americans are back home. It's a good thing to do, but they don't end up to the right place. He will see the trenches tomorrow, maybe after tomorrow. This is where I want to take him to. Because I'm very convinced that I don't see myself as a person, I see myself as a bridge. The more people will know about Cameroon in the West, I will have less work to do. So we will have many of us to share the work. Because something may happen to me tomorrow. And nobody knows how people live in Cameroon. And you don't know what's going on in America. Though there need to be a conversation. Which is what we're doing this. Okay? Another more question?
Can I just make a
Yes.
comment?
Sometimes, I think last year, a group of people going left America that was raised their roots to Cameroon. And when they came, they were given a piece of land, maybe to construct, and they apparently went back. Have you considered the possibility of coming to adopt a Cameroonian nationality?
Have I thought of what?
The possibility of you coming to Cameroon to adopt a Cameroon nationality.
Yes.
Can you repeat the question for your video?
His question is, do I have any intentions of coming to Cameroon and gaining nationality?
And finally settling.
Finally settling permanently in Cameroon? Probably not. And I'm going to tell you why. It's nothing against Cameroon. I feel like it's still a lot of work to be done in America. I feel like I will be best served educating our people more over there and helping more people come back. I don't know if you are familiar with African American history. One of our greatest heroes is a woman named Harriet Tubman. She escaped from slavery. And instead of just staying in freedom, she went back more than 30 times, freeing blacks and taking them to the north, taking them to Canada and the northern part. So, like her, I can't stay here. I feel like there's more people I need to free.
You're useful.
And yeah, you know, maybe when I become an elder, you know, come and settle and retire. But you know, while I'm young, I need to go back and forth. I need to continue to build that bridge. I do hope it will be a dream for me to have a Cameroonian passport, to be a citizen. I think that will be healing for me and my ancestors, for my family, to be a citizen of an African country. And not just any African country, my African country of origin. I think everyone is owed that. Just like Jewish Americans feel it's necessary to be a citizen of Israel, or an Italian American feel it's necessary to be a citizen of Italy. I feel like I deserve to be a citizen of Cameroon. But not just so I can feel good. I want to use my nationality to help bring resources. You know, create business, create jobs, connect businesses here with businesses in America. There may be people here who have products and services they would like to link up with American businesses or manufacturers, but don't have that connection. You know, I think not just dual citizenship for myself, but dual nationality for all African descendants, I think would definitely help both ends. It would definitely help. It would definitely help Cameroon economically, and also I think it would help African Americans as well.
Can I just make a comment, please?
Yes.
My comment is actually in terms of what.
Your name, please?
Yeah, my name is Tenu. I'm a lecturer in the English department. Because when he started talking, I mean, we have students here. What is important, as far as I'm concerned, with this coming to Cameroon, is in terms of what we refer to in literature as the empire writing back, going back to your roots. And you don't know the impact until you get engaged in the process. They said he wept. That is purging, okay? And until you purge your own self, there's still something lacking in your own identity. One of my best experiences was when I was in a Trident Tech in Charleston. And when I finished my semester there, my scholarship, of course, Fulbright was finished, but I still applied that I wanted to go to a completely minority institution. And I found myself in Allen University.
Yeah.
And that's when you get in contact with people. And my students asked me, excuse me, Dr. Mbu, in Africa we are moving along the road. Do you see monkeys, elephants coming at you? And I had a long week to explain so many things to them. I think what we're having here is a situation where we need to ask so many questions. And I've told people the African American is the freest black I've seen in the world. The freest black. The only person who comes out of that thing is a South African. If you don't know yourself, then there's no need looking after the world in which you live. And a colleague asked me in America when we had elections in Cameroon, so we're discussing that, and I talked about the Supreme Court in Cameroon, and she was surprised. I said, do you mean to say you have a Supreme Court in Africa? You know, And I made sure that in my final report, I made that very clear. Okay? And so it's a question of us trying to appreciate his trip, not just as you mentioned the idea of those who came last year as tourists, but he's going to the roots. And for me, I see that as it's a ritual.
Right.
It's a ritual. And before you go through a ritual, you must be ready to go through all the torture, the pain, emotional, psychological, physical. And so when you listen to him talk, when you're reading the text, just try to reflect on the identity complexes involved in the text. Whether it's a text by an African American, Toni Morrison, who is my best author.
Toni Morrison, Richard Wright, Zoe Near Hurston. So many, Richard Wright, Chester Hims, Langston Hughes, so many writers.
Not only the writers, but even the musicians. If you listen to Tracy Chapman, for instance, she's repeating the same thing that you see in the text. And so it's a question of, we are fortunate to have it live. And before I sit down, he mentioned the guy who brought Obama's father to America, Harry Belafonte. One of his songs is describing a slave, not a slave, I think a plantation worker or somebody who works in the coal mine. And the father has been distorted by the task he has, to the extent that when he returns home, the children run away from him. And the mother is telling them, that's your father. They say, no, my father doesn't look so ugly. And he has to struggle with that identity question.
It's a family song.
And yes. So, I just want to say, personally, it's a revelation. And whenever you are with African Americans, that's when you know people who are conscious of their identity. Okay? I ask many students, like you just said, what is the meaning of your name? And I tell them, when you go to say her name is Mary, you forget that Mary is somebody's country name. How we call Cameroon country name is the surname. Okay? Mary is somebody's country name, and you forget your own surname, and you start searching for other person's identity to identify yourself through those persons, which is a problem. Okay? So it's not just us listening to him, but we are also learning on how to appreciate ourselves. Thank you very much.
So, any more questions?
Yes, sir.
Thanks a lot, Blaze, and really interesting. So, my question is, now you find African Americans, you people, you come back to Africa, and you're welcome because we feel you are coming back home. So one gets to think that maybe coming back is because of the frustration that we get in the news. That there are problems, like socially or morally, we have things coming up like homosexuality and lesbianism. That those are things that are bringing problems in the society. So how does it affect you people?
Are you asking me how
do those how can I say that? The social orientations of the gays and lesbians in America affect the African Americans? It's a question that I can answer to. Maybe you can.
we can go. We can both go. I go first. Homosexuality and lesbianism, of course, it exists in America. And there is a movement for gay and lesbian rights, LGBT as it's referred to. America prides itself on any form of civil rights, especially African Americans, because we were in the forefront of civil rights. The freedoms that America has now is because of us. Democracy was literally ink on a sheet of paper until we challenged it. So every group after us, the gay and lesbian movement, the women's rights movement, all of these movements draw their strength from the African American movement because we were the ones who pushed for those things. So there is a huge movement now in accepting gay and lesbian marriages. It hasn't been federally accepted, but you have some states in America where you can legally get married. Homosexuals and lesbians can get married. This is still a social conflict. There's a lot of people who disagree with that lifestyle. There's a lot of people who agree with that lifestyle. You got some who believe people are born that way, and some who believe it's a choice. So there is no consensus in America on that subject. That's still a sensitive subject, even in the American context. I will admit, it's more acceptable in America than it is in other parts of the world. In other parts of the world, I've heard that you can get beaten in public, you know, just here. You know, I've heard, I haven't seen it, but I've heard. In America, it's not uncommon to see two men walking holding hands or kissing them. You know, every now and then you forget and you will see it, you're kind of, whoa. But it's, but you know, nobody is going to meet them with violence. Now, there are cases where there is violent attacks, but not really that often. Discrimination still exists in all forms, not just sexual orientation, but gender discrimination, racial discrimination, so it still exists. But legally, it's not nationally accepted. Legally, it's not federally accepted yet. The government has not recognized gay and lesbian marriages. Some of the states have. They're mainly in the north. No southern state, this is the conservative part of America, you know, has not accepted it, and I don't see it coming anytime soon. But how we feel about it in other countries, to be honest with you, I'm gonna be honest, the average American don't think about anything outside of America. And that's the honest to God truth. Nobody